Welcome back to the Product Podcast, Inbal.
Oh my God, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for having me again.
So last time you joined us was around 4 years ago. You were the CPO at GitHub and you just had launched the GitHub Copilot.
Very, very true. Before the AI hype was real, we just started it.
Oh my God, and you are one of those starters. So what has been kind of the latest and greatest on your end?
Oh, so many things. So, maybe just a recap. GitHub was the start of the current AI hype, but about myself, maybe in 2 minutes or less. I've been an AI ML veteran since the beginning of my career, started my career as an applied scientist, tuned models, did neural networks and genetic algorithms, things that at that time was considered the beginning of machine learning. And then had the chance to spend time in Amazon, build robots, build Alexa, doing NLP at the time that NLP was only a single turn. And then spent some time in Microsoft, in AWS as a general manager in compute. And then I went to GitHub, had a chance to be there at the beginning of the Copilot era. Had the chance to build an AI-powered code complete for developers that ever since then became the Copilot brand name for all the AI activities that Microsoft is focusing on. Had the chance to also take AI towards security. And then a year and a half ago, joined Twilio with the goal to revamp customer experience. Like it's the customer journey in the world of AI is going to look completely different than what we're used to, what we imagine it to be. It's a new world for us. So joined as CPO and head of R&D for Twilio, working on a new customer engagement platform. It's our One Twilio platform. We built the strategy. We started shipping a lot of capabilities in our recent Signal conference, a lot about conversational AI, different AI tools to power security for communication. It's definitely an exciting world. It's a lot of white space and innovation. So happy to be here to talk to you about what happens is.
Yeah, I'm going to try to unpack some of the things that you mentioned. Well, first of all, your title says Chief Product Officer and Head of R&D. What does Head of R&D add to your standard responsibilities as a CPO?
So in addition to managing all the product capabilities, I also manage the engineering and engineering operations for the company. So think about, from the product manager started with the idea of building something and into all the way to the production. So it's an end-to-end head of R&D role.
So you make it happen until the
I
very
make it
end.
happen. It's my team that makes it happen. I just try not to break it.
Cool. Well, one of the things that I heard you say is that AI is not a strategy. So how are you thinking about it?
So AI is not a strategy because what I've seen happen, when the hype started is all the companies, CEOs, CIOs went to their teams and asking them, what's your AI strategy? How are you going to make these magnificent hype that is happening something that is real for a company? And as someone who grew up in a customer obsessed world, this customer mindset, you first think about what is the problem you're trying to solve and then find the right tool. When I'm looking into AI, it's an awesome tool. It's an amazing advancements in the technology that is likely the biggest one that we've seen so far. But you cannot take a tool and make it into a strategy. So you take a tool and you try to figure out what are these things that I'm trying to achieve? What is the new customer needs? What are their evolving needs? What are these issues that maybe before I could not solve, and now with these amazing tool, I can make it better. I can improve customer experience. I can improve automation. I can make developers more productive. There's a lot of questions you should ask yourself as the strategy versus what are you going to do with AI? What are you going to do with AI is a wrong question because you're looking into a tool, you're trying to stretch it and make it work for something that maybe is not the best solution for, and it's maybe not benefiting customers. So then comes the question into why do you need it? So when I'm saying AI is not a strategy, it's like the customer need is always the strategy. And you always find what are these relevant tools to make that need solvable, experience better, automation, productivity, all of that.
So that's where I think some companies struggle, right? Like today, it's not a secret that AI is here to stay. It's very powerful. It has a ton of benefits. And even there are some claims from the very top, like CEO level, saying we need to be AI first, or we need to adopt AI to a certain degree. But I think the next level is thinking about, well, other than why, what are some of the actionable ways of measuring that type of progress?
Right. 100%. Because, for example, if you're thinking about making your teams more productive, that is a strategy for a CEO. I want my teams to be more productive. I want my engineering team to be able to ship code and innovate faster. I want to be able for my support team to be able to handle a bigger load of tickets coming in. I want my marketing organization to be more targeted towards kind of making marketing campaigns more effective, more relevant for our customers. So these are big things that a CEO should go to their team and asking them to do better, right? To improve, to continue to enhance themselves. And then you're looking through the lens of, okay, how can I use these AI capabilities to make my engineering more effective? If it's a code complete tool, if it's automation, if it's testing, if it's even documentation that can be done faster, maybe it's repo management. There's a lot of things that you can use a tool to make your developer team more productive. There's a lot of things you can do to make your support team more productive. Maybe you deploy an AI agent that filter the funnel of tickets coming in. Maybe it makes document search for a customer looking to solve a problem much more seamless. Maybe escalation to an agent is becoming faster, more relevant. So basically, you find yourself measuring the things that matter. And the things that matter are around productivity, around automation, time to market, customer value. And then you don't need to use the AI measurements as a success metrics. You're looking into the real problem as a success measurement.
I want to try to push you to help us go one step further here, because I think that's where the nitty-gritty is. And I personally want to learn more about it, right? So assuming that AI is not the strategy, we start with the why. The customer need is the strategy. We identified a certain set of use cases that can be measured and where AI makes sense to deliver that type of progress. Then what?
Well, that's the product manager 101, right? When you're building a product, you have to have a success criteria in mind. Doesn't matter which product it is. What is your end goal? What are you trying to achieve? Let's take into example one of our recent product that we have launched in Twilio. It's called Conversational Relay. The idea was, how are we taking the world of AI agent into the world of voice flows? So how are we helping customers realize better AGIs on top of a voice flow so they can build their own agents using kind of the Twilio platform and make support cases more successful? When you're looking into that world, you're asking yourself, what is that problem we're trying to solve for customers? So what are you trying to do? You're trying to reduce the amount of tickets coming into a support team. You are looking into creating a better CSAT with the customers that are engaging with the bot, because we all remember the world of IVR. Click 1, click 2, and then click 55 more ones to get into an agent at the end of the line. And by that time, you're so frustrated and you're very tired and you don't want to talk to anyone anymore. So how are we removing friction, right? Making customer satisfaction higher? How are you creating shorter time for resolution when a customer has an issue? So these are the success metrics in this specific example that you define to yourself. And now you're putting the tools in place and you're starting to see how is this evolving from a legacy kind of engagement to a new AGI power engagement. Do I see any improvements in the customer satisfaction? Do I see shorter time to resolution from the flow? Is customers less asking to talk to a human agent? Like how much escalation to an agent? So you're looking for that specific use case and you're defining these specific metrics. And then you're comparing one approach versus another. You're kind of doing your A/B testing. This is the experience I had. This is the experience I'm going for. Or this is what the market has been doing. Here's what my new approach is. And you're looking to see these improvements because these are tangible. This is something you can measure. If you're trying to say, is my AI making me more productive? The definition of productivity is like, it's the most ambiguous one. And well, I remember that I had one conversation with a customer and they asked me, how do I measure that my team is more productive? It's like, I don't know. How do you measure their productivity today? Is it the amount of lines of code they're writing? Is there the time to development? Is that the time to fix an issue? Is that the time to roll back when there is an outage? How do you define productivity? Against that baseline, Now you can deploy a tool and measure the betterment of that tool. Is it making your team more productive? But if you don't know to define these success metrics, there is no one fits all that is helpful. It depends on the use case.
Sorry, I get it, and I love that we're getting to that nitty-gritty. I just want to even push us further here for a product person himself, right? As you are now going through this development cycle, if you will, and you are incorporating some level of AI to execute on your behalf, to validate if that execution is correct. Like, how much of that process, if you will, is changing now for the next generation product leader?
I think it changed a lot, but it's mainly changed the way we think and operate. When we're thinking as a product manager in a world of digital software development, which is where we were before the age of AI, when you define an experience, you usually had a set of outcomes that are well defined, right? It was a world that was very deterministic. Even when your software developer was taking kind of your product vision and they were sitting down and writing code, they wrote that code line by line. They knew exactly what it is they're trying to build against. Now, as a product manager, you're defining a world that is much more behavioral versus a specific outcome that you expect, because that world is not deterministic anymore. If you're now using AI tool, we live in a world that is much more stochastic in nature, which means you cannot always predict what is your AI agent going to do and behave in every given moment. But you want to give it boundaries for the behavior. So if you're looking to automate contact centers, okay, you're looking to augment people with AI agent. You're looking to deploy an AI agent that is trying to solve a specific set of problems. Now, in the previous world, you would define these flow to the T. You will tell it if a customer is asking A, you give them these options. Now they go down the tree. There are 3 more options. Now you're giving more the training to the model. You're telling it, if a customer is asking this question, here's the corpus of data that you should search to find the answer and then craft the answer in a specific way. But if I'm a customer A, I will get this answer. If I'm a customer B, I will get a very different answer. It's still same in nature, but the product manager cannot anticipate how the AI tool is exactly going to craft this answer. And is it going to cover all the points that the product manager wanted to define in that flow of answers? So now comes the time that you're defining behavior, not defining flows. And then you're moving this behavior to your engineering team, and the engineering team needs to start building this behavior. And then there is even bigger ambiguity around that. So as a product manager, you need to start thinking differently. You're starting to focus on what is that behavior of that product that I'm trying to build? What does good look like? What does bad look like? How does a good day look like? What does bad day look like? What I want it to do and what I don't want it to do, and what I cannot handle, what I cannot predict. And what can I not predict? How much of that is bad? How much is that is good? So it's becoming an interesting world that we were in a 1-0 world to a world that we have 1, we have 0, and we have everything, all the numbers between 1 and 0 happening, right? It's an infinite opportunities that exist in the middle. So I think that's one. It's change your mindset that you cannot control everything. You need to define these guardrails and then test that whatever you planned is operating with that guardrail. I think that the second element is you need to understand the system that you operate within much more deeply. Like you need to have that system thinking, because you cannot control every if else that exists in that flow. You need to be able to wrap your head around what is my system design? So how are all these components that I'm building going to interact with each other? What is that outcome that I'm trying to achieve at the end of the day? And when you're thinking about these two, it's like, okay, I have infinite possibilities in my level of behavior. And then I need to understand the system design. These are two things that historically product management did not spend time on. And it's not necessarily tools or skills that we all have in our toolbox because we never spend time on. So how are you learning to develop these tools and skill set? You need to understand the tool better. Most of the time as product managers, we don't spend so much time on the tech per se, Like you don't go and understand the cloud that your engineering team is building on every aspect of it. But it's not the same when you're now starting to use things like AI tools, because you need to understand what you're asking the engineering teams to do. You have to understand the world it operates and how it operates.
That's a really good point. And you come from a very technical background, which I'm sure helps. I remember back in the day, a lot of PMs would come from that technical background. That was glorified. Then there was a phase where the narrative was, well, you don't need to be that technical, right? You can do a lot of things without code. And I feel like we're going back a little back in that sense, but maybe it's not so much from the coding standpoint. So I would love to learn more about what are some of those technical aspects that you are referencing to for a PM to actually be confident in this AI world.
Yeah, so I'll start with the first one that I mentioned is system design. You need to understand the components of the system that is powering that experience that you're trying to build or that product that you're trying to build. Understand the cloud that it is running on, understand the capabilities of the AI tools that maybe your engineering team was choosing for you, and understand how all of these are connected. So spend more time in understanding the high level components of the system that is powering that product. I think the second thing is you have to educate yourself on what AI is. Because we have, it's a big statement, AI. Most of folks that they talk today about AI are talking about AGI or LLM. AI is a wide variety of spectrum that includes a lot of things, from machine learning models to AGIs today. So educate yourself. What does that mean? What does an LLM? How an LLM is behaving? What is an agentic AI? How does an agentic AI workload behave? What is predictive AI? Because also you want to be able to guide your engineering team on the right choice. Each one of them has a cost. Each one of them has a pros and cons. You cannot leave completely that decision just to the engineering team. So understand the models. And I think the third one is spend time on how would you measure success on the outcome? What do you want to get out of that? And it's not, I want a customer that is happy. Like, what exactly are these outcomes that you would like the system to produce for you so you can measure them? So it's much more analytical in nature, the measurements and behavior that they are looking for. And I think the fourth one, I would say cost, because sometimes we are not looking into how much does it cost us to develop a product from the level of infrastructure. And we know that AI workloads tends to be very expensive. So understanding the cost that is associated with your product to also be able to choose the right AI solution for the product you're trying to build.
I like that last point because I've been hammering on that for quite some time. In fact, we see more and more product leaders becoming GMs officially or unofficially, right, to have a better understanding of like the unit economics of the business. But like the other point that you mentioned around like being more technical, understanding system design, and like being able to even be a partner to the engineers, not just bullshit your way through engineering, is now more relevant. In a way, like the role is now more demanding because you're also probably going to have less of those type of roles, given that I assume your team might be bigger if you can leverage more AI agents.
Right. I think that the role is definitely shifting. Like you will see, I agree with you, officially or unofficially. In my view, PM have always been some sort of a GM, because if not, you're a product owner, not a product manager. And for me, that's the biggest difference is as a product manager, you need to understand the product you're building, but you also need to understand the business that you're operating in, right? You need to understand what is the unit of economics. You need to understand how the marketing team is going to help position the product you have built. You need to understand the go-to-market engine that eventually is going to sell your product. You need to understand which customers you are selling to and why you're selling to these customers and how these customers are going to behave. It's definitely becoming more and more relevant in the world today because our systems are becoming more and more complex. The use cases are becoming more and more broad. So the role of a product manager is becoming more end-to-end in the thinking, from I have an idea to how my customers is using my product, but also how my sales team is selling that product, as well as what my customers are doing with my product that I never imagined they will do, which happens more often than none.
So now I would like to shift gears and talk about how you're actually implementing AI within your portfolio of products, right? It's almost like drinking your own champagne. And the first thing that comes to mind when I see a company like Twilio is like, oh my God, this is massive. There are so many products that, like, I want to understand you. I heard you use the term customer engagement platform. Like, how do you actually position your product?
So our product, which it's a customer engagement platform, it's a customer experience platform. We look at that as a Twilio platform. And the biggest thing that when we're looking into our platform, we're looking to make the customer journey better with a brand. So all of us have experience having endless SMS or emails in our mailbox with a marketing campaign that we never will click on because maybe that's not interesting to us. It's not appealing. We think maybe it's a phishing campaign. It's not relevant, right? There's a lot of noise. So when we're shifting in Twilio the perspective to a customer engagement, we want to make sure that we are doing the right service for our consumers, not necessarily just our customers, but the end consumer that is getting that SMS, that is getting that email, that is getting that engagement contact from a brand to make it more appealing, to make it more relevant, to make it more personalized to you. If it's a marketing engagement, if it's a support engagement, maybe it's a sales engagement, maybe when you think about Twilio, think about like the basic thing. You're getting a reminder from your health provider that you have an appointment and you need to see your doctor. That is powered by Twilio. Now, what we have learned just by looking into that specific use case, you're getting a notification that you have an appointment with your doctor. If we make that engagement coming to you through the right channel that you're likely to engage, you're more likely to show up to that meeting. So we help that business to achieve the goal they wanted to achieve, which is you showing up to a meeting with your doctor, which if we'll not get any reminder, you're likely not going to show up. And if you get a reminder on a channel that you don't necessarily engage with, it can be an email or an SMS, you're not likely to show up. So how do we find that specific channel that you're more likely to engage with? And the second thing, how are we making that message much more relevant to you? If it's mentioning your name, or you have an appointment with Dr. A, B, and C, and maybe the goal of that meeting, and maybe you're waiting for 5 months for that meeting. So we are going to remind you again and again that you should show up to that meeting. So that's one example, but think about anything. There is Nordstrom sale happening right now. Everyone is getting flooded by messages, but it's like, okay, do I shop usually in Nordstrom or maybe not? Why do I shop in Nordstrom? Maybe not. So how have I making that engagement much more relevant to me and my shopping experience, my brand engagement that we're looking for? So when we're talking about a customer engagement, that's how we're thinking, is who you are as a consumer. What do I know about you through my engagement with that specific brand, which is the memory of you? And then what is the message you're likely to react to or not? And how am I making that message to much more conversational versus just flooding you with a marketing campaign? Like, how am I creating a two-way conversation? So that's, in a broader kind of brushstrokes on the Twilio platform. But now going back to AI, like where AI is relevant to the customer engagement platform, the short answer is everywhere. Think about that you're getting SMS that might be real, maybe not. You don't know if it's a spam or a fraud or someone is trying to get your SSN number. How am I making sure that when you get that message, you trust it? There is security tools that are running on the background, and they're monitoring the traffic. They're validating the sender on Twilio's behalf to making sure that if we're sending you, Carlos, a message, it's coming from a validated sender. And then monitoring that the traffic itself is also secure. So you have an AI tool that is doing monitoring on traffic. You have AI tools that are sitting in these conversational AI virtual agent flow. So when you're calling someone and you want to talk to support, and instead of having these 1, 2, 3 clicks, you are talking to an AI agent that is similar to a human engagement. You have these conversational that is happening. We recommend a brand, what type of message they should send you through which channel, because we understand your profile. So we know that you, Carlos, likely read more emails than open an SMS, or maybe you prefer a WhatsApp versus an SMS because you spend more time on that. And you likely engage with a brand that is selling shoes versus selling shirts. So if they want to reach out to you, maybe they should send you a campaign around shoes and not necessarily about shirts. So all of that is AI, because now we're looking to curating the data and activating that data through different flows. So these are just examples. When you're thinking about a customer engagement platform, it's likely one of the richer platform in AI capabilities, because it's all about data activation and personalization.
And I think a lot of that intelligence that you are describing wasn't available that way before. Like I would think of Twilio, and we are customers, even we are customers of Segment before you acquired Segment. It was more of the pipeline of like, okay, here is where the data flows, but then we need a different tool that maybe holds the data and interprets the data, and everything had to be integrated, and we needed multiple people, and we would spend a lot of meetings to kind of prep and clean up the data. And I think now that is available, and it's hopefully living within a single platform. So that also simplifies the flow much more.
Yes, 100%. That's the goal. That's why we're calling it the One Twilio platform, because we're bringing together the communication, all the contextual data that you mentioned with Segment, which we are referring to more as a customer memory. Like we know who you are and how you behave, your timeline and events, and then combining that with AI to really drive that activation. What is that goal that you're trying to achieve, and how can we make it seamless for you to achieve on top of Twilio?
That leads me to another question around data flow, because I can imagine if a company starts from scratch using a single platform, then they don't have that problem because everything lives in the same place. But most companies that started some time ago, they will have some data fragmented across their CRM, their CDP, and other systems, right? And now we're hearing about MCP as the next version of API that can help simplify all of those integrations. So how are you thinking about bringing together data that is not currently living within your system?
Yeah, so for us, for example, in Segment, we have built data connectors for a while now. So besides the data that exists in our CDP, you can connect your data warehouse. You can connect the data that exists in Salesforce. So when we build the extensibility of Segment, we were focusing on making data connectors. And the idea is that you can connect any data source that you have in order to create that layer that is now being able to activate. That's contextual data layer. And then on top of that, you can run AI. I think one of the things that I've seen is that customers are trying to use AI as that data connector. So what happens at that point in time, you don't necessarily can control how AI will draw information from each one of the data sources. So you want to be able to connect these data sources before you're trying to apply AI on top of that. And connecting the data sources doesn't mean copying the data. It doesn't mean transferring the data. It means that you have kind of a connector that is orchestrating all your data sources. And now you can run the different AI models that you want on top of that data. It makes your AI much more robust and much more likely to do what you want it to do versus let the AI decide how to connect the data on your behalf.
So the data connectors or APIs have been around for some time. What we're hearing now is MCP as a new protocol. And I'm curious to know, how do you think that type of protocol can impact the way companies integrate with each other?
Yeah, so we see already companies that are using MCP. And the idea is more, how do you use MCP, right, to categorize the data, label the data so it's more readable by AI agents. That's the basic goal for an MCP. So that is one of the building blocks when you're thinking about the data connectors. You can connect them through an MCP server, or you can do different connectors and then call to an MCP server. There are different architecture that you can pick and choose. But if you're looking into that layer that is going to connect to an AI agent, more likely it will be MCP. But we live in such a fluid world that maybe today is MCP and tomorrow there is a different protocol. I don't think that anyone has landed yet on what exactly is that protocol is. We know that recently Google announced that they're donating I think the A2A protocol in order to make sure that AI to AI conversations are happening. So we're still in the middle of flux. We at Twilio, we support MCP servers because we want to be able to support our customers where they are. But it's one of the building blocks. When you think about your data strategy, you need to understand what is that architecture and where you want to use MCP and for what.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to shift us to another area here that I'm very curious about, which is your own product team. as you have a portfolio of products, and you even mentioned you also own the R&D piece, how do you structure your own team?
So when we went through a restructure more recently, I think 6 months ago, to align our teams towards the product development. And basically, the guiding principle was identify what are these areas that I want to cut across all my products. So what are these platform components? What are these shared services components? So you can think about like billing platform or a console. These are the elements that sit in kind of a shared services product team, because I want to make sure that the experiences we're building towards the customers are consistent, that the way we do billing is not cumbersome for customers. So we're making sure that we're aligning that. And then we're looking into structuring the teams that are building customer-facing products through their core capabilities. So we have a channels team that is responsible on all the channels. We have a team that is focusing on all the channel orchestration, because there's a lot of common ground between the channels that needs to come together and build this intelligent layer. And then we have teams that are focusing on data and identity. So they're focusing on activating the data towards creating these customer identity or identity verification. So the short answer is identify what are these overlap and what are these consistent teams you want to live together, because you're trying to create a standard, versus teams that are focusing on customer specific activation. And you want to make sure that these teams are focusing. Now, in terms of AI, we don't have a single AI team that exists within the product that they're responsible on AI, because as I said, we're treating AI as a tool. So my expectation is that all the PMs in my organizations are enabled on what is AI, how to use AI, where to use AI. We're much more focusing on centralizing data as a strategy versus AI, because AI is such a use case based type of an implementation and understanding that I wanted to decentralize the AI development across the different product team.
And for you as the CPO, like how do you balance the different even products and other shared services that you are overseeing, just to make sure that you are working on the right priorities for the business?
So we do annual planning. And in our annual planning, we're kind of defining, here's the big bets that we're going to go after year over year, or for the next year. Sometimes it's multi-year, but most of the time it's here's next year planning. And when we're doing these planning, we're looking to see what are our existing products, what is our existing platform that we need to support to continue growing our existing products. We identify what are these next set of products we're going to build, and how do we kind of align them to the current org structure? Do we need to build a new org and then have a backlog and working backwards plan? And that is the guiding principles towards how are we planning for the next year. And then, of course, all the execution is happening on a quarter by quarter. But the idea is that at the beginning of the year, we're looking into, here's the arc where we want to be at the end of the year. We also define the goals. Here is a ship date. Here is an outcome. Here's the amount of customers we want to onboard on these experiences. And we take the entire org through an annual planning. So it's identifying, do we have capacity? Do we have the right skills? How many people we have? So that's one element of the planning. And the other one is all around the working backwards. So the team has a high rigor of writing documents like PRFAQs or PRDs that really defines, here's the customer problems you're trying to solve, and here's why we're doing it. Here's the market research that is coming with that, and here's what we want to build. And these are kind of inputs to our planning.
So I was recently listening to an interview from the CEO at Perplexity, and he mentioned, obviously they are all about AI. He mentioned that everything is changing so fast that their planning goes on a quarter by quarter basis, just because they can't even predict what they're going to be focusing on next. And that might be too extreme, but in your case, I'm just curious to know, like, even assuming that you can forecast for a year, like how do you go about also giving yourself enough wiggle room to also make adjustments based on new inputs?
Yeah, so because we do our execution plan on a quarter by quarter, we're always refining, we're always updating. Like we allow ourselves to pivot, but we want to be able to create that fabric for planning. And I think that the biggest difference between a company like Twilio and a company like Perplexity is a company that is built on AI. And like their core is AI. And that landscape continues to evolve so fast that they have to be able to be nimble and agile in a very, very high speed. While Twilio is a big company that is a communication platform company, a lot of our products are existing and growing. We are continuing to do a lot of improvements, but that business is a big business. We support 320,000 customers that we already have on Twilio. So I cannot break their stack every quarter and kind of be happy, right? So it's just a different world that Twilio lives in. And then we have different level of agility across our work streams. So when we're doing our planning, we kind of have 3 work streams. We have, here's what it takes to keep our customers workloads running, right? It's like, it's the basic one. Don't have an outage. Don't break the stack. Make sure that the customers can continue running their very, very critical services that they're running on Twilio all the time going. And then you have the next work stream, which is all around how we continue to grow everything that we already ship. If it's feature enhancement, if it's upgrade, all of that. And then you have the third layer, which is all around fast innovation and products that we're building. That layer is much more fast moving, much more iterative. We continue to learn on a very fast pace. The second one is slightly slower, and the last one is slower. So you need to manage kind of speed across these 3 different work streams. Depends on where the company is, what's the level of maturity, and so on.
Do you define those 3 different work streams per product?
Yes. Yeah.
And then got it. And then within product, are the PMs supposed to define their percentage of time allocated to each of the work streams, or do you have dedicated PMs for each of those work streams?
So we have product teams that is supporting a product, and within that product team, we have PMs that are dedicated to the different work stream. Now, I would say it's a joint effort between what is the business outcome we're trying to achieve. So in the annual planning, we try to define this percentage across each one of these work streams. Here's what is your capacity towards make sure that the services are running. Here's your capacity to grow our existing one. And here is the net new innovation that we're expecting you to drive. So the PMs get that as a guideline as part of the planning. But of course, it's very flexible and it's very robust and it changes throughout the year. But we're trying to make sure that we're allocating enough capacity across all of them. So we don't find ourselves just doing all the fun, shiny stuff, but we also support our customers on the day-to-day basis.
And just to wrap this up, so I know you guys have this annual conference called Signal. You recently announced a bunch of new updates, including, funny enough, your partnership with Microsoft. You keep going back to Microsoft one way or another. What's next in the horizon for you?
Oh, lots of things that I cannot talk about. Well, there's a lot of things that are happening in the Twilio. As I mentioned, we started talking before that the customer journey is changing. And we at Twilio, we lead that change. We see ourselves as responsible to redefine customer journey. And as such, we're building a lot of new experiences and products based on our existing products, but also we're shipping our platform. By the end of the year, we've announced it in Signal that we're building that platform for our customers, and it's coming end of the year. In kind of different phases, different variations, but that platform is that new customer engagement platform that you and I talked about, that is powered by AI, that is taking advantage of data, that is taking all the communication and creating that multi-channel orchestration. So these are big movements for Twilio. It's one of our biggest innovation in kind of bringing all these products together into a single platform versus the world of APIs that we lived in before. And there is much more exciting things we're working on that will be delivered by our next conference. So stay tuned.
Thank you, Inbal, for joining us again. It's been a pleasure to learn from you.
Thank you so much for having me, Carlos. It was so much fun seeing you again.